Welcome to Saturday Stitches with Frankenstein's Fabrics. This week I am adding to the paisley that we did last time, and what we're going to do today is we're going to do what I like to call a double paisley. Now you can also do a triple paisley if you want, but you will find you will get a bit dizzy if you do too much of it. So I recommend, if you're going to use this stitch, that you use it sparingly until you get used to doing large quantities of it. So same setup as what we did with our first paisley. You're going to do your paisley shape, but then you're going to come back and do a second one that's an echo and smaller inside it. So as you can see here, just cut that thread. I've got my first paisley, which is setting up the shape that I want. The second one can come in and do a small amount. It's sort of creating like that inner part of a petal, if you think of it like that. So there's a couple of options where you can do that. If you wanted to do the triple, it's the same, except you would be coming in a third time. And I mean, you can do as many as you like, as small as you want to get them. But see how you go with the double first, and then go from there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start from the other side because of that thread issue. And I'm going to work my way in and around this one. So this is a good way to... if you do a bit, you need to change bobbins, threads and what have you, you can just start wherever you like and then fill it in and you'll never know. The other thing you can do too with this to give it nice texture is every so often just do one paisley shape and don't do the second level. And so what it does is it actually gives the effect of like these are flower petals, but then the ones without the double are leaves. So always remember that you can use your travel stitches and travel back over yourself. And actually the more you travel on these paisley shapes, it does create more and more of a stem. So you don't actually have to draw a stem in because it just happens naturally. So as you can see here, these look like leaves or even small buds that haven't opened. And so if you were to do something, for example painting, and you painted these, say, two different colors, you could then paint those green to look like leaves or small buds that haven't opened yet. having a little bit of trouble on this edge here because it is the edge of the quilt sandwich that I have, and it just gets a bit fiddly on that that naked edge of the wadding here. So when you've got things like this, the very edge of your quilt, just take it slowly. Now, one tip I've learnt over the years, quilting customer quilts, my own quilts, charity quilts and all sorts of things, is that very dense quilting stitches like the Paisley, like your stipple, depending on what size you do, and a couple of others like the swirl and that sort of thing, can hide a lot of sins. Now, if you've got a fabric that's stretched for some reason, bit of manhandling and it didn't sit properly, or something wasn't measured correctly and it's been, there's too much fabric in, say, a border for instance, and it's got a bit of a wobble to it, these stitches can help you disguise if you have to put in any kind of dart or compensate for a bit of wobble in the fabric. So I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but there's a bit of stretch here where this edge was here, and I've just caught a bit extra in this seam, in this bit here. There's a couple of stitches here, so there's a little bit of a ripple. So don't be afraid if your fabric does move a little bit, because some of these stitches will help suck in that extra bit of fabric. If you do get stuck, you can always lift your quilt top and put in a little piece of extra wadding in the space where the buckle is. So say if it was like this, if I put an extra piece of wadding in and then smoothed it out and quilted it quite densely, it would soften that extra bit of fabric that's in there. So have a play. Now, just another note on the side of that comment with the rippling fabric on borders and things. If you want to prevent that happening in the first place, please learn how to attach your borders correctly, and that will solve a lot of your quilting issues. If you do get stuck with anything like that, please feel free to ask. I can give you instructions on that. I will be filming other videos on techniques and things in future, but at the moment we're just doing free motion because that's what everybody's asked for. Okay, so there is our finished block of double paisley. As you can see, the tracking makes it look like there are spines through here, and the single ones do look like leaves. Now, there was one other technique that I wanted to mention while we're here, seeing as I have this tail of thread, is way back in the beginning I talked to you about the different gadgets that I like. Now, one of them is called a self-threading needle. Now, I know this is going to be entirely impossible for you to see on camera, but this is a needle that has a tiny little V shape at the top here where the eye of the needle is, and inside there's a tiny little spring, so it's a little coil, like a little piggy tail. And there's a top and a bottom, so the piggy tail's in between. It looks a bit like a figure eight, so a V with a figure eight underneath it. I like to tie my ends in and sink them into the wadding so that I don't have to tie knots, do reverse stitches and things like that, and muck around with hand sewing. So what I like to do is I get my self-threading needle, my two tails, so my top thread and my bottom thread, and I always pull the bottom thread to the top and sink into the top. You literally hold the thread taut, push the V down, and it's threaded. I then sink my needle into the quilt and into the wadding and come up an inch or so away from where I went in. Push the needle through and pull my threads out. I then cut them off at the surface and you can't see where I was. And this means that those two tails are just sitting here and they will get quilted into the next block and be secure. So that is a really good way of getting your thread ends in faster, so you don't have to muck around too much and spend lots of time tying little knots and threading needles and things like that. So we've got 2 more empty blocks on this test sandwich, so we will have 2 more videos and then we might change it up a little and try something different. So stay tuned for more videos with Frankenstein's fabrics. Thank you for watching Saturday Stitches. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and we'll see you next time.